Nobody's going to tell you this. Not your bank, not your financial advisor, not your mates at the pub that know a little bit about property. So I will. Most people who could afford to buy an investment property right now aren't. And for all the wrong reasons. I've been involved in over £10 million worth of property deals. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how a buy-to-let mortgage works and how you can start investing in buy-to-let property today. First thing to understand is a residential mortgage is very, very different to a buy-to-let mortgage. On a residential mortgage, they're looking at your earnings, your income, and your outgoings and how much debt you have. Usually, it's about 4 times earnings, less whatever debt you have, that they'll give you on a mortgage. So if you earn £50,000 a year, you're likely to be able to get £200,000 worth of lending. Buy-to-let is very different. They look at the property, they look at the potential rental income and whether there is a rent to income ratio to cover it. So it's about 1.5 times. So if £500 worth of mortgage, if your mortgage is about £500, you need 750-ish pounds worth of rent coming in. So it's very, very different to a residential type. It is more on the deal, what is coming in, what is the potential, what's the potential of the area. They look at it very differently. So straight away, you don't have to think, oh, I only earn X amount, I can't borrow anymore or buy anymore. I get that all the time with the buy-to-let mortgage. Is like, how does it work? It was a struggle for me to get a residential mortgage recently because of my income and outgoings. How do I get one now? It was a struggle for me to get a residential mortgage recently. I'm never going to be able to get a buy-to-let mortgage. It's not like that. 2 different products, 2 completely different things, 2 different types of lending. So to summarize that part, you don't need to be earning hundreds of thousands of pounds. You don't need to be an absolute expert in property. You just need to understand who to speak to, what product works for you, how a buy-to-let mortgage works, and you can get started. So what do you need for a buy-to-let mortgage? Around 4 things, right? So you need a deposit. So you need normally about 25% of the purchase price. So if it's £100,000, you need £25,000. As a bit of a rule of thumb, I say you need 35% because you've got stamp duty, land tax, stamp duty, you've got legal fees, you've got buying fees, and you've got mortgage fees. So you probably need around 35 grand if you're buying a £100,000 house. Now, don't let that put you off. You might have that in savings, you might have equity in your house, you might have that from mum and dad potentially, or auntie and uncle, or you can joint venture and work with somebody. But fundamentally, you will need a deposit to start. It is around 25%. Very different to a residential mortgage where you can have a 5 or 10% deposit. Income. Now, this is a bit of an interesting one. Most lenders would like you to see you have a £25,000 a year income as a bit of a base, as a bit of a starting point. Now, it's not always vital. I've seen someone recently that sold his business, so technically didn't have a job and had no income, but the lenders still worked. The deal was still good enough for him to buy. He had some money, he had some savings, so he bought the property, but he didn't necessarily have an income. So it's very much horses for courses, but as a bit of a rule of thumb, £25,000 a year as a basic income is ideal. Now, most people do that because that is pretty much minimum wage. And you can do that if you've got, between you. So if you're doing it with your spouse or you're doing it with your business partner, that's almost nailed on. Credit, you don't need a perfect credit score. So if you have a couple of black marks, if you missed a couple of payments, you've done a few bad things, it's not the end of the world. Now, it'd be great if you could keep it relatively clean. And from this point, I would recommend going to My Credit Score and having a look at your credit rating to see what your score is. Keep an eye on it and track it because it is helpful and it just stops a little bit of friction, which is not what we want. We don't want any friction. That's why we can make it easy for ourselves. And then the last one is the rental coverage. As I mentioned, the bank want 150% coverage of their mortgage. So they want you to have the money for the payment plus some. So as the example I used earlier, if your mortgage is about £500, they need a minimum of £750 rental income. Now, what I look at normally in the areas that I look at, we nearly do this all the time. We nearly double the ratio of what we are. So a lot of the time, mortgages on the houses we buy, in the areas that we buy, are anything from £300 to £400, and we're getting £800 plus. The mortgage coverage ratio sometimes trips people up. So I'm going to have a look at one live. I'm going to show you live, show you the coverage, and I'll actually show you my deal analyzer spreadsheet, which is absolutely gold. And if you love it and you want it, comment in the comments below and I will send you it. Okay, so we're going to look at a really simple deal that I would find and analyze. I'm not going to go into too much depth. I've done some videos on how to find killer deals in the past on my YouTube channel, so have a little look. But I'm just going to show you roughly what we check and then what that means for the debt coverage ratio, for example. So looking at this, we looked at this one in Wakefield, not far from me, currently on for 100,000. Say we did it up, of which we might do. A nice one is there, 140. So it's going to be worth 140 when it's done up. And then I'm having a look on here. This is Property Engine, great piece of software, incredible. £800 a month rent. A few more for a bit more, but I think that's a good comparison on the street. £800 a month rent we'll get for this when it's worth 140. We go to size ultimate deal analyzer, absolute killer. Let's put this in Wakefield. And so the agreed purchase, we bought it for 90, but it's going to be worth 140,000. I'll show you this. Then we will go down to the monthly rent. It's going to be £800. Now, the other side of things, the loan to value, the mortgage rate at the moment for a buy-to-let mortgage is about 4%. You could get some at 3.7, 3.8, you can get a few more, but we're going to use 4.1% because that's what I'm getting roughly at the moment. So on an interest-only mortgage payment, as you can see on my little sheet here, at 75% loan to value, our mortgage payment is going to be £243 a month. So the lender wants at least it to be £500. No, not quite that much. Probably at least only £400. Now we're going to have monthly rent at £800. So I'll show you down here, down at the bottom, our rent to mortgage coverage ratio here, as you can see where my thing is 3.29. So we smash it out the park. Now, just as a bit of an example, if our rent was only £300, our rent to coverage mortgage ratio would be 1.23, so the lender wouldn't do it. Now, this is the key that we're doing all the time, is we want to find properties in good areas that have good rental demand, good rental yields as it is. £800 on that £200 mortgage, actually it shows you that you make £400 a month. But on my little spreadsheet here, it shows you what the ratio is. So on this, a property of about £140,000, we need the rent to be above £350. It's very easily done here. If we're in London, for example, and the property price is £500,000 and the rent's only £2,000, I'll do it as a very, very quick example, just to show you there. Say we put it in as 500,000, and the rent there, we'll put it as £500,000, and then we did say £2,000 a month rent, just as an example. The rent coverage ratio would just be about right, but it's a lot tighter, it's a lot different, it's a lot harder to hit. So that is a clear example of what works and what doesn't work and where we look. So hopefully that helps you. So I've shown you a deal, you've had a look at the deal, you found the deal, you might be a Rightmove or Used Property Engine, I've just shown you. And then a lot of people make the mistake because they don't quite know this, and it's absolutely fine, is we go to our bank. And our bank might be one of the big four, HSBC, NatWest, Barclays, Lloyds. And they'll say to you, no, we're not going to give you a buy-to-let mortgage. It's not something we really do. And we only do it for big, big boys. Like Lloyds only lend to portfolio lenders, so people with lots of properties. So you're like, where do I go? And the best thing to do is a specialist mortgage broker. So I can recommend one in my community. I have a guy called Levi. He is a genius. He invests in property himself. He understands the market. Now, what you will never know, because they are what we call challenger banks, small banks that you don't see on the TV or on the internet per se or advertising, is you get banks like Paragon or Shawbrook. They lend specifically to buy-to-let lenders. So it's like you've got to know what you're looking for and where to go. Now, if you said we'd found that house we've just seen in Wakefield as an example, and you were like, where do I go? And you go to Levi and he goes and speaks to about 10 different banks. So you don't have to. They pay Levi a small fee. He gets a small fee up front for doing this, about 500 quid. He takes a little bit off the back end from the lender, but it is worth its weight in gold, because there's no way you go speak to all 10 of these lenders. You probably really know that they exist. He goes and says to them, I've got this property, what terms do you have? And he'll come back to you with a lot of options. Here are your options. What's the best rates over the best period of time? And you can make a choice on who to go with. So It is not a matter of just going to knock on HSBC's door on the high street. You have to know where to go next. So this is an example of what the process looks like. Let me talk you through. Theoretically, you've seen this property, you like the idea of it. Now, normally, just before you've looked to make an offer on the property, you spoke to your mortgage broker. Said, Levi, here are all of my details. Can you get me an offer in principle? So Levi, I'll get you a little bit of an offer in principle. Like, yep, we can get this person offer. The estate agent that we were buying that property off would ask you for this up front. But then once you've had the offer accepted, we go to the market and we say, this is my property. I want some terms on this. I want some lending on this. Levi will go away. He'll get that. While Levi's sorting out the mortgage and the lending, you're in what we call the conveyancing process. So we have a solicitor. Our solicitor is Luke. Go to say, Luke, look, I'm going to buy this property. So Luke will sort out. He'll do searches on the property. He will make sure the property's okay. He'll check the title register. He will check things like local searches to make sure there's no problems with the property. Have there been no problems with the area? This will all go together, like smoothly, hopefully. But you are getting your lending sorted from Levi. Luke's doing some work in the background. You're not doing loads, a little bit of paperwork in between. Probably getting your builder sorted out for the refurb. But this is all going on smoothly. It takes about 8 to 12 weeks, it should do, on a nice buy-to-let purchase. Like, bit different to your residential because we won't have loads of chains, a property like that that's empty. You're not waiting for anyone, them to sell or to sell your property, not in a chain. So while Luke's doing his thing, Levi's doing his thing, working that together, 8 to 12 weeks, you have the property bought, and then you can start the renovation, start the refurb. Then we can look at what we call a refinance down the line. And hopefully you'll start getting some rent pretty quickly as well. Start making money, we rinse and repeat that model. So you've seen how it works very quickly, very basically, high level stuff, but hopefully that gives you a bit of an understanding and some confidence to start investing in buy-to-let. If you want to know more and want a little bit more guidance, click on the link below and book a call with the team. If not, I'll see you in the next video.